I'm State Senator Megan Hunt, MEGAN-HUNT, and I represent District 8 in Midtown Omaha. LR 269CA would place on the ballot a proposal to create a nonpartisan, independent, citizen-based redistricting commission. I'm eager to have this conversation now, right on the heels of our special session where we did redistricting, rather than 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now. It's good to do it now while the redistricting process is still fresh in our minds and in the people of Nebraska's minds. There's an appetite for this conversation in the public, and I think it's better we have it now than in 9 or 10 years, when all of us will be gone probably. Late last year, we convened for a special session to complete our redistricting duties. This is something the legislature is tasked with doing every 10 years following the U.S. Census. The census provides us with fresh population data, and the redistricting process is how we redraw the boundaries of our election districts to reflect population shifts and try to keep them roughly equal for voters. It's a highly consequential process because it determines who can vote and who represents us in the next decade. In Nebraska, our Constitution was written to delegate all the responsibility for this process to the legislature. This probably seemed like a good idea at the time when politics and state government operated much differently and didn't have the modern tools that we now have at our disposal. But for decades now, Nebraska's redistricting process has been tainted by partisan interests. That's because there's something fundamentally undemocratic about having elected officials draw their own district boundaries. Even in the unicameral, we run and we operate on a nonpartisan basis, but we all have ties to parties in some capacity. We get support from certain people and interest groups, and we each have a vested interest in seeing redistricting go a certain way because our jobs and our votes and our bills depend on it. With LR 269CA, the legislature would resolve to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot for voters to decide if Nebraska should put some checks and balances in place around our redistricting process by creating an independent redistricting commission. The language I have here is modeled from the initiative petition that circulated in 2020. It failed to gather enough signatures due to the pandemic that year, but it's really just a starting point for this discussion, and I'm very open to changing the particulars of it. This constitutional amendment, if approved by the legislature and the voters, would establish a politically balanced 9-member independent commission to redraw district lines. It would prohibit anyone who has been a lobbyist, elected official, party leader, or candidate in the past 5 years and their family members from serving on the commission. Members of the legislature would screen commission members, and the commission would recommend a plan for district boundaries to the legislature for approval. This way, the legislature would still play an oversight role in the process, but there would be a citizen arm of checks and balances to make the process more fair and transparent. 18 states have some form of independent redistricting commission. 5 of them have advisory commissions that assist the legislature with drawing maps. 10 have a primary commission for drawing maps, and 3 have a backup commission to decide what the maps will be if the legislature doesn't come to agreement. Bills like this, or resolutions like this, to reform redistricting and make it more democratic have been brought by Nebraska senators every session for years now. They've differed in their approaches, but they've all had an eye toward making this process more balanced and transparent. Most notably, our now treasurer, former Senator John Moranti, worked on this for years and passed his bill to do this in 2016, and it was vetoed by the governor. Moranti chose not to override the veto because Governor Ricketts said that the LB improperly delegated redistricting authority because the legislature is constitutionally required to draw district lines. My bill addresses that concern by bringing a constitutional amendment to the people. If they vote in favor of it, it will change our Constitution to allow them to do this. At the time, Governor Ricketts also said that he had a concern with an unelected advisory committee having map drawing responsibility. In my bill, I address that concern by having a check of having the legislature screening committee screen and appoint members to the redistricting committee. There's also parameters around who can be in the pool, so it's not just anybody who's going to get selected, and no one who has a blatant conflict of interest is going to be eligible to serve. I would also say, just in principle, elected officials should not be drawing their own maps. It's just a belief that I have, and a lot of Nebraskans share that belief. And I think it'd be a good idea to let this go to the ballot and see what they decide. In this past redistricting cycle, we heard from Nebraskans about their frustrations with how everything, some things felt obscured from public view. Many meetings were close to the public, not streamed or televised, or scheduled at the last minute during a pandemic. The software that we used took so much bandwidth that we only had it on two computers in the building for 49 senators, plus each of their multiple staff members and the public to use, and it was very slow. The mapping process itself on the computers was extremely tedious and time-consuming and difficult to understand. And I have to give a huge shout out to the Legislative Research Office and their staff who carried this process on their backs and helped us all with it so much and made it possible for us to draw our maps. They did an amazing job. So I'll grant that some of the murkiness around this process was just due to us trying to figure out the process that we haven't gone through before as we went. There's a couple people in the body who've done redistricting before, but because of our 8-year term limit, that's really not typical for people to have done it twice. But to me, that's not really an excuse because we have the capacity to do it better. All of these factors culminated in a redistricting process in 2020 that the public felt left in the dark about, to hear them tell it. And all of this underscores the need for us to delegate some redistricting power into the hands of an independent body that will be unmotivated by party affiliation or special interests. As many people say when it comes to redistricting, voters are supposed to pick their representatives, not the other way around. With our current system, the legislature is picking its voters. And it's not just bad government for legislative districts. By letting the legislature control the boundaries of all election districts, including those for Congress, there's always going to be ample opportunity for bribery, for quid pro quos, or underhanded influencing of district boundaries in order to score points with future Congresspeople or candidates, or just to set yourself up for a good run in a future office. Or maybe the legislature doesn't really like a candidate or an office holder and they want to make their chances of election or re-election more difficult. The system is just rife for abuse, and while we want to give the appearance that this is all done fairly and without any abuse and it's done in the light of day, each of us in the room knows that that's not really the case, and Nebraskans know that too. So as much as we try to do the right thing, there's always going to be that pressure and incentive for some of us to make decisions that are beneficial for us and not really what's right for Nebraskans. So it's for that reason that I think Nebraskans should have the opportunity to choose if they would like us to have an independent redistricting commission that we select that then gives maps to us for approval. I think that we owe it to Nebraskans to place a significant part of the process in their hands and make sure that we can do this in an independent and impartial way. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hunt.